What's up everyone, John from Beyond ARTV. It's time for a very special episode of 7 on Sunday, actually 17 on Sunday this week, because I am counting down Linkin Park's 17 greatest songs. And of course, this is all just my opinion, so if your song, your favorite Linkin Park song, doesn't make the list, there's no reason to be offended. Keep in mind this is all just my opinion and my point of view. Let's get things started. Number 17 on my list comes from the album Meteora. It's titled Don't Stay, and it's one of the first Linkin Park songs that I ever heard. I will still never forget the first time listening through this thing, just because I was out skating with a couple of my friends. They had like a little half pipe set up and everything, and he brought his boombox out there, and I remember hearing the opening track and the glass shattering and then it crashing straight into Don't Stay, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And just falling in love from there. Number 16 is one of those tracks that I never thought I would have been putting on a best of Linkin Park list. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have called you fucking insane, but here we are. It's one of those songs that often gets overlooked. I've heard a lot of people say that. I was one of those people for a very long time. Robot Boy is one that focuses on mainly Chester Bennington, the lead singer of this band's voice, and it just kind of has a haunting feel about it. It's one of those ones that puts out a brooding atmosphere, and it's not necessarily about the instrumental here. I think the main thing that I tend to focus on here is Chester's voice, although this song does build and kind of turns into this huge thing. It's got this nice aura about it, and I can't really resist it at this point. Number 15 on my list might surprise a few people, mainly because it's one of the songs from Living Things that I feel like a lot of people didn't give a ton of attention to, and it's actually the only song from Living Things that made my top 17 countdown. The vocals on this track are done entirely by Mike Shinoda, and that was kind of unexpected the first few times I listened through this album, but it's been the one to stick with me from that album. That album has kind of faded away for me. It's not one of my favorites from Linkin Park, even though I did really like it at the time that it came out. But Skin to Bone has stuck with me for a reason. It's full of these awesome kind of grinding synths, some background electronic flourishes and that sort of thing. Not really any guitars or any hard-hitting drums on this track, but they don't really need to be in order to keep me captivated and keep me reeled in. Number 14 is off of 1,000 Suns, called Waiting for the End, and it's one that I could probably sing, rap, mimic the instrumental for you from start to finish. It's just that good. Moving on to 13, we see All for Nothing featuring Helmet's Page Hamilton. Chester Bennington plays a limited role in this song. He was off doing things with Stone Temple Pilots at the recording of this record, and I feel like maybe that's why he wasn't a huge part of a few of the tracks. All for Nothing still succeeds though. Mike Shinoda is a great writer. He really showed off his MC skills here on this one. I love the guitar line on it. It's just hard hitting. It's a gripping instrumental on this track. The drumming and everything about it, some shouts that come in terms of the vocals on this one. I think that's still Chester's voice that's kind of hitting hard in the background along with Page Hamilton's voice. It's just one of the best songs off of last year's The Hunting Party. We roll on to number 12 and we see Lying From You off of Meteora. It's one of those tracks that I wouldn't necessarily think that I would still like at my current age, but maybe this is one that I'll never grow out of. I love just how aggressive this track is. The guitars on it are huge, as are a lot of them on their opening album, Hybrid Theory, and then of course Meteora as well, which is what this album is from. Number 11 falls into similar territory just because of how aggressive and hard-hitting it is, and it's one of those tracks off of Hybrid Theory that I feel like a lot of people might have overlooked, I guess, at the time, but I think coming back, it still holds up well. Number 10 sees some of the best rapping from Mike Shinoda that we've ever seen on Bleed It Out. The opening verse on that thing, killer. Kills it. Chester on the chorus and some of the screams on this track. It's just one of those tracks that even people who don't like Linkin Park that I know, they still like this song. Take a few steps back for number 9 because we have a slower song in My December, one of the bonus tracks from Hybrid Theory. It's a tune that kind of leaves you with a chill down your spine. It makes you think a little bit because you don't think that maybe someone like Linkin Park would have put this out, especially so early in their career, but it's one of those songs that's very well thought out, and I would have to say kudos to them for making a song that still holds up strong 15 years later. Number 8 is ironically Figure 09 off of Meteora. That doesn't quite compute, does it? It is one of their most intense songs that they've ever made. It's just so angry and pissed off. I love how raw the screams from Chester feel on this track, and just overall everything about it has this wonderful feel. Meteora as a whole is a great album, and this had some of its best aspects all in one track. Don't change the album yet because we've got another one from Meteora at number number 7, we've got Easier to Run. It's one of those tracks that just really stuck with me through my teenage years and helped me out a lot. It's one of those ones that is talking about wanting to get away from problems, wanting to do things over, get a second chance. And I didn't really necessarily see it. There was a few years where I didn't quite listen to it as much, but I keep finding myself gravitating back to it. Numero 6, we have The Little Things That Give You Away off of Minutes to Midnight, the closing track that is over 6 minutes long, and it just kind of blew me away whenever I fully started appreciating this track. Now, the first time I listened to Minutes to Midnight, I was like, some of these tracks are boring, some of them are slower, give me Meteora again, because I was like 16 years old and I knew what I wanted from Linkin Park at the time, and I wasn't very open-minded. But coming back to it years later, after I had graduated high school, I see The Little Things That Give You Away is easily one of the best songs that they've ever done, just because it just shows so much growth for them as a band, and it shows what they can do with this delicate instrumental that is steadily powering, growing, and basically turning into a roar eventually. Number 5, we have a very political song, Wretches Kings, from a very political album, 1,000 Suns, and at the time this is one of the only ones that really stuck with me. I would say Wretches Kings, Blackout, Waiting for the End, pretty much the only 3 songs I was keeping and holding on to the first few years that I listened through 1,000 Suns. Wretches Kings contains a sample of a speech that starts things off and of course closes it, and of course closing with that solo, that turntable solo from Joe Hahn that is just phenomenal. Some of the only scratching that we really prominently got to see in the spotlight on this record, and I love it for that. And of course Mike does great on the verses on this one, and then Chester with the kind of shouted chorus on this thing. Very, very assertive with his voice, and I don't know, it's one of the best songs on 1,000 Suns for me. We're getting so close at this point. Number 4, we have Points of Authority from Hybrid Theory. Forfeit the game before somebody else takes you out of the frame. It puts your name to shame, cover up your face, you can't run the race, the pace is too fast, you just won't last. Nailed it first take, no lie. This track pretty much features everything you would expect from an early Linkin Park song, some of the hard guitars, the turntable scratches, the rotated vocals between Chester Bennington and Mike Shinoda, but it all works well. Some of the tracks don't quite hold up as well as others, especially the older I get, but this is one track that I can't help but have a good time while I'm listening to it. Now with number 3, I don't care how old you are. Guilty All the Same featuring Raw Kim. Hello, wake up. You're listening to one of the greatest rock songs to come out of the 21st century. Number 2 is Faint from Meteora. So is number 1, that's off of the same record, but we'll get to that momentarily. Faint is one that I just love the quick pace about it. It's so energetic, enthusiastic, and I can't help but shout along every single word that I still know from front to back to this day. I am a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard, handful of complaints, but I can't help the fact that everyone can see these scars. I am what I want you to want, what I want you to feel, but it's like no matter what I do, I can't convince you to just believe this is real, so fine, let go, watching you turn your back like you always do, face away and pretend that I'm not, but I'll be here because you're all that I got. Speaking of the one, it's time for the number 1 song of Linkin Park's career, in my opinion, Breaking the Habit off of Meteora once again. It's just such an emotional and powerhouse of a tune that, anyone who doesn't like this track, I just have to shake them and say, what is wrong with you? What don't you see here? Yeah, I can see some people writing it off as an angsty preteen or else teenage song about not knowing what to do with your feelings and feeling misplaced and that sort of thing. You could argue the same thing against tracks like Somewhere I Belong off of the same album, but hey, I think this is one that deals with a little bit more than that. I think this is about self-harm, suicide. Obviously, if you watch the video for this, it's a suicide played backwards, so just thought it was a really, really powerful tune. Still very emotive to this day. I can remember screaming along to this in the shower just because I felt so frustrated about things whenever I was growing up, not really knowing what to do with myself, my situation with my parents, and that sort of thing. So Breaking the Habit is definitely number 1 on my list for a reason. I hope you guys enjoyed this very special episode of 17 on Sunday. We'll return to the regular format next week. Maybe let me know your top 5 Linkin Park songs in the comment section down below, and let me know if there's other bands or artists that you'd like to see me maybe do a top 7 or even a top 17 of in a future episode. Thanks so much for watching, hitting the like button, maybe subscribing to the channel, because friends don't let friends go unsubscribed. I'll see you very soon right here on Beyond ARTV.